The Temple Mount in Jerusalem has never been excavated, but an illegal construction project 20 years ago opened the door to some major discoveries.
For decades, experts believed the Temple Mount would never reveal anything new. Excavation was banned, access was restricted, and every attempt to study the ground beneath it was shut down. But
whoa! Okay, see that? That's amazing.
That's a split, right?
That's a split.
But when researchers used advanced AI to analyze deep scan data, the system detected something no one expected.
The Temple Mount itself has never been excavated, but over the past century, archaeologists have been exploring the areas around it.
Beneath one of the most contested places on Earth was a sealed room that had not been touched for centuries.
And there are even theories that some of these underground passages have hidden chambers where the Jews hid the Temple Mount treasures, some suggesting the Ark of the Covenant itself.
And what the scans revealed inside shocked even expert archaeologists. The hill no one was allowed to touch. For centuries, the Temple Mount was known as one of the most sensitive places on Earth. Every community that held it sacred approached it with caution because any action taken there carried consequences far beyond the hill itself. Jewish tradition taught that it was the site of the first temple, the ancient sanctuary built by King Solomon, and the second temple, the rebuilt structure that stood until its destruction by Rome. Islamic tradition taught that the Prophet Muhammad ascended from this location during the night journey. Christians believed that several moments in the life of Jesus occurred around its edges. Three major religions looked at the same hill and saw their most important memories, and that shared connection created constant pressure around every decision made there. This pressure often turned into real conflict. One incident frequently referenced by officials happened in the early 2000s, when repair work near one of the old entrances led to a serious dispute. Reports from that period state that a small reconstruction effort triggered an argument between local Christian and Muslim groups because each believed the work might alter the structure in a way that affected their own historical claims. According to several eyewitnesses, the disagreement escalated so quickly that authorities had to intervene before the situation became violent. It became a reminder that even a simple plan to fix a broken section of the site could cause widespread unrest. Because of events like this, leaders from different administrations treated the Mount as a place where almost nothing could be changed. Excavation was completely off limits. Officials believed that digging into the ground would be interpreted as an attempt to control the site or erase another group's connection to it. This concern was strong enough that governments and religious councils agreed to restrict access in a way rarely seen at other archaeological locations. The soil itself was considered too sensitive to touch. Archaeologists felt this restriction more than anyone else. Many believed the hill contained valuable information about early Jerusalem. Some suspected that ancient foundations might still exist underground. However, none of these ideas could be tested. Researchers were allowed to study texts, surface ruins, and surrounding areas, but the Mount remained sealed. Some experts later admitted that it was frustrating to stand near a place that might contain answers to major historical questions, while knowing they would never be allowed to examine it. As the years passed, the idea of exploring the Temple Mount faded. People assumed the underground layers would remain hidden forever. The site became a quiet zone where no one expected any new discoveries. That expectation collapsed unexpectedly. A routine construction task that seemed harmless at first revealed something that archaeologists had never been permitted to see, and it changed everything that followed. The soil that was never meant to leave the Mount. The event that broke the long silence around the Temple Mount did not start as an archaeological project. It began as routine maintenance carried out by workers who were following instructions from the Islamic Waqf, the authority responsible for managing the site. In the late 1990s, the Waqf approved a plan to expand an existing underground prayer area. According to several reports, the work involved clearing and widening interior spaces that had already existed for centuries. The workers were not performing scientific excavation, they were completing a religious and structural task, and archaeology was not part of their assignment. During this work, large quantities of soil and debris had to be removed to level the floors and prepare the space for use. Since archaeological digging on the Mount was forbidden under all agreements, no trained experts were present to supervise the soil as it was taken out. There was no documentation, no recording of layers, and no attempt to separate historical material from ordinary fill. Workers loaded the soil quickly, focusing on completing the expansion. Truck after truck transported the material out of the compound and dumped it in the Kidron Valley, east of the Old City.
About 400 truckloads of soil saturated with archaeological artifacts were dumped right down there in the Kidron Valley.
The seriousness of the situation only became clear after the soil had already been removed. When scholars heard that thousands of tons of material from inside the mount had been taken out without examination, the reaction was immediate. Some experts described the news as alarming. Others said it felt like losing a record that could never be replaced. They understood that this soil came from a location where scientific access had been forbidden for decades. It was not ordinary dirt. It was a mixture of materials that had remained sealed beneath religious and political restrictions. Researchers began visiting the dumping sites to see what had been discarded. Even without any careful screening, the soil showed signs of deep history. Pieces of pottery were visible on the surface. Worked stone fragments appeared in several piles. Unverified reports claimed that small mosaic pieces and broken lamp parts were also found scattered in the dumped earth. As more small finds emerged, the picture grew more concerning.
We find one by one coins or pieces of mosaics, pieces of clay, all kinds of findings from the beginning of the First Temple period.
Experts believed that pottery and bone fragments from the First Temple and Second Temple eras might now be lying randomly in the valley. Some suggested that later periods, such as the Byzantine and early Islamic eras, were also represented in the mix. The soil had become a cross-section of Jerusalem's past, but it had been pulled out of the mount without any scientific method, leaving researchers unsure of how each piece originally fit into the larger history of the site. Many archaeologists describe the situation as a painful loss. They had always been told that the mount could not be touched, yet its soil had been removed without them. The context was gone, but the material itself remained. It was damaged, scattered, and unlabeled, but still full of information. Two researchers refused to treat the dumped soil as a permanent loss. Their next decision would transform this discarded earth into a new path for studying the Temple Mount without ever stepping onto its surface. The rescue operation that rewrote history. The soil removed from the Temple Mount could have remained a permanent loss if not for the decision of two archaeologists. In 2004, Gabriel Barquet and Zaki Devira created what later became known as the Temple Mount Sifting Project. Since they were not permitted to work on the mount directly, they focused on what was already outside the site. Their idea was unusual at the time. They would not dig into the hill. Instead, they would bring the hill's discarded soil to an outdoor laboratory and study every handful of it. The project began in a public park in Jerusalem, where they set up simple workstations with screens, buckets, and water hoses.
And here we're doing some kind of excavation, which is a new technique, with water that we use here in these specific stands to filter all the dust.
It did not look like a traditional archaeological site, but it carried the same scientific purpose. Volunteers from around the world began arriving. Some came after hearing about the controversy, others joined out of curiosity. The project accepted everyone. Tourists, university students, and locals all worked side by side. Each person received a bucket of soil. They washed it through wire screens and examined whatever remained. According to reports from the early years of the project, the excitement grew quickly because almost every bucket contained something interesting. Over time, the discoveries multiplied. The team recovered more than 500,000 artifacts. This number shocked many researchers because it proved that the soil removed from the mount was far from ordinary debris. It was a record of continuous human activity that stretched across thousands of years. Every era was represented. There were Israelite period fragments, Roman pieces, Byzantine items, and objects from the Islamic, Crusader, and Ottoman periods. The soil was like a compressed history book that had been opened for the first time. Some of the finds were especially meaningful. Clay seals bearing ancient Hebrew names appeared in several collections. According to scholars who examined them, some of these names matched priestly families mentioned in old texts. This suggested that official activities related to temple life were recorded in this soil. Another discovery that gained international attention was an ivory comb with an early Canaanite inscription. Although the message was simple, it offered a direct connection to ordinary people who lived more than 3,000 years ago.
First sentence ever written on their language from 1700 BCE apparently appears on an ivory comb, inscribed with a hopeful plea to wipe out the lice.
Bronze incense shovels, fragments of lamps, beads, and decorated pottery further revealed details about daily life and worship on the mount. These discoveries proved something important. They showed that the Temple Mount had never been an empty or idle space. It was always active. It hosted different cultures, beliefs, and communities throughout its long history. The soil itself became evidence of this constant movement. However, this project only revealed what had already been thrown out. The real mystery still remained beneath the mount. To uncover what was still hidden underground, researchers needed a new method that did not disturb a single stone. When technology became the only way to dig, the mount had proven that it held countless layers of history, yet the most important parts were still sealed under the surface. Some experts believed that if they could gain supervised access, they might finally answer questions that had been debated for generations. With this hope, a small group of archaeologists tried once more to request permission for a controlled excavation. Reports state that the proposal was extremely limited. They requested a narrow test area and offered to work under strict supervision from all relevant authorities. They even agreed to use non-invasive tools first, before touching the soil. Despite these efforts, the answer was the same as it had always been. Access was denied. Officials believed that even a small excavation could be seen as a threat by different communities. The rejection disappointed many experts, but it also forced them to think differently. If they were not allowed to enter the ground physically, they needed a method that could see through it without disturbing anything. This is what led them to ground-penetrating radar. The proposal to use radar was unusual because it required placing equipment on the surface, but it did not involve digging of any kind. According to several accounts, this distinction helped the idea gain approval. Radar was seen as a peaceful way to study the site because it used waves of energy rather than tools. It did not break stones, move soil, or expose artifacts. Once the approval was granted, the team brought in the radar equipment. The process was simple in appearance, but complex in its results. Radar waves traveled deep beneath the surface and bounced back whenever they hit something solid. The machine recorded these signals and produced rough outlines of what was under the mount. These outlines looked like shadows and shapes without clear meaning. The raw data was massive, full of signal noise and confusing formations. Human eyes alone could not interpret it with accuracy. This was when artificial intelligence became the missing tool. AI programs could sort through enormous amounts of information much faster than any human team. According to researchers involved in the project, the software analyzed radar signals, identified repeating patterns, and compared layers of data that humans would have missed. It also cross-referenced the scans with old British mandate maps that showed earlier tunnels, water channels, and forgotten structures. The AI matched shapes, depths, and angles across different scans, slowly reconstructing the underground layers. This approach allowed researchers to explore the mount without touching a single stone. They could trace the outlines of walls, chambers, and long-buried features simply by reading the digital reconstructions. For the first time in modern history, the hidden layers of the Temple Mount began to appear clearly on computer screens. It felt like opening a sealed room without ever unlocking the door. As the scans improved and the programs became more precise, the Mount began revealing something unexpected. The underground city beneath the Holy City. The first radar images arriving in the lab looked chaotic. Most of the research team expected the scans to reveal nothing more than a few broken foundations or isolated pockets of air trapped beneath centuries of rebuilding. Instead, the AI began linking repeated shapes across multiple layers. According to several researchers, this was the moment the team realized they were looking at far more than scattered ruins. The ground beneath the Temple Mount was organized. It had structure. It had planning. Long corridors emerged first. They stretched beneath the platform in straight lines that did not match natural fractures in the rock. Some corridors curved sharply before connecting to larger rooms, and others ran parallel, almost as if designed for coordinated movement from one underground zone to another. Their precision convinced the team that these were engineered passageways, not accidents created by erosion or collapse. As the scans deepened, chambers appeared. Some were empty, smooth, and perfectly shaped. Others were irregular, showing signs that later civilizations had altered or expanded them. This mixture confirmed that the Mount had been reshaped many times throughout history, with each era adding something new beneath the surface. One chamber in particular drew immediate attention. The AI reconstruction showed straight walls, a small recessed space, and faint Greek markings. Scholars identified it as a compact Byzantine chapel. Reports stated that its condition was unusually good for something buried beneath centuries of activity. This suggested that early Christians once used it as a quiet place of prayer beneath the platform, even while the world above shifted between different rulers and traditions. Directly beneath this chapel, the scans revealed something older. A row of massive stone blocks appeared. These were heavy ashlars that matched the cutting style known from the earliest phases of Jerusalem's construction. Several experts noted that their size and technique aligned with building practices used during the First Temple period. This implied that later structures had literally been built on top of earlier sacred architecture. The Mount was not one era stacked on another. It was many eras interlocked. Then the water system appeared. The scans revealed channels, reservoirs, and narrow pipes running beneath the Mount like a planned grid. Mineral signatures suggested that parts of the system dated to the 8th or 9th century before the Common Era. According to some reports, the layout resembled systems built to support ritual washing and temple activity. The precision of the water flow controls indicated engineering skill far ahead of its time. Each new result pushed the same realization forward. Beneath the Temple Mount was not empty space. It was a buried city shaped by centuries of worship, engineering, and rebuilding. Every scan revealed another layer of human activity, deepening the sense that the mount had been constructed, reconstructed, and repurposed again and again over thousands of years. But none of these discoveries compared to what the AI flagged next. The anomaly did not match any known structure, and it would soon change the direction of the entire investigation. The sealed entrance and the room that should not exist. At first, the anomaly was easy to ignore. When the radar sweep crossed the southern edge of the Temple Mount, the screen showed a clean curve that did not match any known chamber or tunnel. Some researchers believed it was equipment noise. Others insisted it was interference from modern construction. But when the scan was repeated from multiple angles, the curve appeared again in the exact same place the data was sent back to the AI for reprocessing. This time, the system isolated the curve and compared it to every underground feature mapped so far. The shape was too consistent to dismiss. After several passes, the AI produced a sharper model. The curve was not a natural bend in the rock, it was the outline of a sealed entrance carved directly into the bedrock. The room went still. A sealed door under the mount was something no one had ever documented. Some archaeologists argued that the reconstruction had to be wrong. Others countered that the mount had been built and rebuilt many times, and not everything had survived in historical records. The debate grew tense because if the image was accurate, it meant the mount contained a chamber no modern team had ever known about. When the AI reconstructed what lay beyond the doorway, the disbelief worsened. Behind the sealed entrance was a circular room, roughly 10 feet wide. The walls were smooth and even. There were no signs of collapse, water damage, or later modification. According to the scans, the chamber had been sealed deliberately and had remained untouched for an extremely long time. At the center was a large stone basin carved from a single block. Radar signatures showed a different texture inside the bowl, which experts identified as compacted ash. Around the basin lay the shapes of fallen oil lamps, their soot patterns suggesting they had once burned for ritual or ceremonial use. In several spots near the perimeter, the AI detected clusters that resembled incense fragments and simple offering pieces. Up to this point, the findings were serious but still within expectations. Then the system flagged something that no one could explain. Along one side of the chamber stood a long circular stone table. It was carved as a single solid piece. 12 evenly spaced stone seats were positioned around it. The structure did not match any known design from documented temple architecture. It did not appear in Byzantine, Roman, Islamic, or medieval records. According to several team members, the room fell silent when the model of the table materialized on the screen. The debates started immediately. Some archaeologists believed the table was designed for council gatherings or ritual assemblies from an unknown group. Others argued it could have served as a preparation platform for ceremonial practices. A few researchers suggested that the 12 seats represented administrative divisions rather than spiritual symbolism. Nothing was certain. The table did not match any known historical reference, and its placement inside a sealed chamber only deepened the confusion. There was one point of agreement. Whatever happened in that room had been intentional, structured, and important enough to hide. Now the team needed something more than scans. They needed evidence that could anchor this chamber and its mysterious table to a specific moment in Jerusalem's early history. The evidence that no one was ready for. When researchers began examining the chamber's scans, they expected confusion. They expected contradictions that would allow them to dismiss the discovery as a misreading. Instead, the evidence pointed in one direction with alarming consistency. Every test narrowed the time period. Every measurement removed later possibilities. Slowly, the team realized they were dealing with something that should not exist beneath the Temple Mount. The first results came from the lamps. Their shapes and spouts were compared to verified examples from different archaeological periods. The software repeatedly matched them to styles used in Judah during the 8th and 7th centuries before the Common Era. Several experts argued this was impossible. They believed any structure from that age would have been destroyed by later rebuilding phases. Yet no matter how many times the analysis was repeated, the match did not change. The limestone basin produced an even more troubling result. Microscopic studies showed a mineral pattern identical to stone pulled from quarries used during the time commonly associated with Solomon's building projects. According to internal discussions, this finding caused real disagreement. Some insisted the samples must be contaminated. Others argued that the chemical signature was too specific to ignore. The ash samples pushed the debate further. Chemical testing showed the pattern of controlled ritual burning rather than domestic fire. This meant the chamber was not a dwelling or storage area. It was a place used for ceremony. That realization made the team uneasy because no known records mention a sealed ritual room beneath the mount. The table posed the biggest problem. Unlike the lamps and basin, it offered no clear markers that could be tied to a specific century. Yet when specialists examined the carving style and the way the seats were shaped, they noted similarities to early stoneworking techniques used in the region during the same general period as the other artifacts. The match was not exact, but close enough to suggest that the table did not belong to a later civilization. This only deepened the debate. If the room was truly sealed during one of Jerusalem's earliest eras, then no one could explain why a structure that looked designed for a gathering of 12 had been constructed in complete secrecy beneath the mount. Architectural analysis added the final layer. The chamber's symmetry matched early sacred design principles known from the First Temple era. No feature of the layout resembled Roman, Byzantine, Islamic, or Ottoman construction. The combined evidence pointed toward a period between the 10th and 6th centuries before the Common Era. This was the era associated with the earliest temple traditions. For decades, experts believed that no physical structure from this time would ever be confirmed beneath the Temple Mount because excavation there was forbidden. Yet the chamber existed. It was real. It was still sealed. That forced a deeper question. The chamber was not damaged or collapsed. It was intentionally sealed with precision, left untouched for centuries beneath one of the most contested places on Earth. No surviving record mentions its purpose. No tradition describes a hidden circular room beneath the mount. The silence surrounding it may be intentional, and some officials expressed concern that releasing the full details could trigger global tension. Now the mystery has shifted. The issue is no longer what the AI found. It is why this room existed at all. Who sealed this chamber beneath the Temple Mount? And why keep it hidden for so long? Tell us what you think in the comments.